Thanks for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, I appreciate your time. In this episode, I want to look at how Western countries have miscalculated the continent of Africa. On this channel, we talk about geopolitics, on how the continent engages its strategic partners around the world. I appreciate those of you who continue to smash the like button and sharing our videos as we continue to enhance your geopolitical knowledge on why geopolitics is the most important thing that's influencing the world at the moment. Because what happens in Beijing or in Washington or in Durban or even in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso will definitely affect you in the United States of America in New York. That's the reason why geopolitics controls a lot of narratives that we here at The Explorer, we have made it our bread and butter. In this episode, I want to explore some very important specifics why Western countries have miscalculated the continent of Africa and why they should start respecting the continent of Africa. Wait a second before you start screaming in the comment section. When I talk about respect here, I'm not saying you roll the red carpet. I am talking about strategic engagement. This is vital. You can copy from the Chinese on how they approach this. If the West continue to engage Africa from the perspective of condescending and paternalism, then you will receive a backlash. So let me go ahead and give you some perspective and analysis regards to where things stand, in regards to how the West perceive the continent of Africa at the moment. So without any more delay, let's dive into our analysis. The West need to start respecting local values when engaging with African governments. Otherwise, anti-Western backlash will intensify across the continent of Africa. Africa is Europe's southern neighbor. It's increasingly in the limelight. On one hand, Western politics fail to foster cooperation and growth in African countries. On the other hand, the media often depicts Africa in a negative way. This lack of political engagement is most often due to lack of knowledge, frequently bordering on the ignorance, and public opinion is affected as a result of this. News media and reports showed shortcomings rather than huge opportunities in the continent of Africa. Africa is undeniably a continent with bright future. Most of its land, with the exception of deserts and the Sahel region, has fertile soil suitable for agriculture and forestry. It is an abundant in natural resources and is experiencing a demographic boom. This growing population has social, economic, and significance for Africans and also to the future. A growing demography enhances the economy, and children also provide social security. In fact, the primary threat to social security in Western countries is the lack of young people. This particular perspective on why the continent of Africa has been perceived from another angle, it's where the clash continues to come through, because African governments and nations have wanted to work alongside their former partners, some will say colonial partners. But Russia and China are beginning to eat into this market as a result of the condescending behavior that we experience in the geopolitical circle. But again, the continent has once again talked about the importance of making sure that the partnership is on a win-win aspect. Let me look into the current influence and the struggles across the region to also secure Africans' hearts and minds. Foreign powers competing for influence. Africa occupies a vital strategic position between the Indian Ocean and the South Atlantic. The continent has become one of the theater for power play between expansionist countries and more assertive other nations around the world, and to a lesser extent, traditional European powers, also including the United States of America. Other countries such as Turkey are also successfully increasing their footprint on the continent of Africa. Both the United States and Europe attempt to nudge African governance towards specific values, making their support conditional on certain issues. Unfortunately, the traditional European colonial powers have either abandoned Africa or continue to treat it in a paternalistic way. Both the United States of America attempt to nudge African governance towards specific values, making their support conditional on certain issues. While some of those advisable approaches are welcome, Others fail to take into account African culture, self-perception, and tradition. This has led Africans to perceive certain actions as neocolonialism, while some of those accusations might be aimed at triggering guilt and garnering more support. Some are also justified. Often, Africans demand the right to choose their own path. China has funding infrastructural projects that provide African countries with real benefits while refraining from criticizing issues related to governance and values. Beijing's objectives are clear. It offers a tangible support, although it is not uncontested locally in the continent of Africa. In exchange, China gets to expand its political and economic influence, enhancing its geographical and geo-economic position. Russia primarily focuses on providing military support in the continent of Africa. At the first glance, its objectives are similar to China. However, there is another angle. Moscow is significantly involved in the Sahel region, which is engaging its strategic partners like Burkina Faso, Mali, and also including Guinea across the continent of Africa. This region has seen countries like France being kicked out with regards to the strategic partnership that has lasted for over a century. This region, directly south of the Sahara, faces not only challenges, but the countries at that particular region at the moment are beginning to move slowly with regards to seeking their own freedom and fighting for their own sovereignty. The Kremlin might have an interest in fostering a collaboration in this particular zone. Europe supply lines of those minerals, including uranium. So this notion that the Western partners should come to the continent and instruct the continent on how to do things or provide guidance and support with some string attached. That's where the problem is. We all have seen the current president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, has halted all aid that related to emerging economies and also a number of areas. This is a huge concern across the continent of Africa. It tells the African people that you don't have to wait for these particular partners to provide you the support you need. You have to step up to the plate to make your own strategic decision. That's the reason why China is providing economic assistance in terms of other aspects, in terms of development and infrastructure. Russia, on the other hand, are providing the security that the continent of Africa needs in several ways. So, the traditional European partners have to reconsider their approach regards to the continent of Africa. But let me look at the misguided Western initiatives, which is prevalent with regards to their collaboration and engaging the continent of Africa. Africa is an important partner. The Western partners cannot ignore that anymore. It is the most important continent with regards to its strategic position around the world, like as I've pointed out. Top United States of American politicians have been to the continent. Previously, in the other administration, Kamala Harris, the former vice president, and the Secretary of State Antony Blinken also visited several African countries. Recently, there is a new Secretary of State of the United States of America, Marco Rubio, who I would consider in other strategic engagement to lack foreign policy experience, at least the African experience. On those trips, both American and European leaders prioritized democracy, inclusion of human rights, and also governance. Why those are crucial issues? It is essential to acknowledge that Africans need to develop those aspects themselves in a manner compatible with their living conditions and values. Otherwise, there may be strong and unintended counter reactions from the continent of Africa. It is important to understand that the approach that Western countries use in the continent of Africa, the condescending approach in several areas. African governments have a huge challenges. There is a emerging population, there is a growth population, and people are changing. The demography is changing on a daily basis, and the government of Africa are preoccupied with these particular issues. However, if they consider issues which, according to those governments in the region, that is not of importance to them, then if that is the conversation in the geopolitical circles, then it will not sit well with regards to how they perceive. A number of leaders in those regions have said that these issues should be discussed at the parliamentary level, that it's not up to the hands of the government or the president of those countries. I think that's where the misconception comes about. Most Western partners think that African leaders can just sit and make decisions on that particular aspect. There are things that African leaders can make decisions on. If Europe opened its doors to the continent of Africa, as an equal partner for trade. It will enable the continent of Africa to perceive Europe and its strategic other partners as equals. This is what the Chinese are doing. The Russians, to an extent, are engaging. The Indians, to an extent, they are engaging Africa, Turkey. So it does not mean that these other partners offer a wonderful option for the continent of Africa. It's just as a result of that, the continent of Africa is going through a lot at the moment, and they want to choose partners that will provide them a win-win option. As a result of African having natural resources, that doesn't necessarily mean that it ends there. Africa have other challenges that need to be resolved. So by engaging the continent of Africa from a condescending approach, it will only receive backlash from those different geopolitical partners across Western nations. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in regards to Western engagement with the continent of Africa and why China, Russia, Indians, and other geopolitical partners, including Turkey, continues to beat the European partners in the continent of Africa in terms of strategic relationship. Why the United States of America has struggled. Again, make no mistake, the US has some huge engagement in the continent of Africa and different programs that the US have been involved in. But with Donald Trump cutting on aid, which is one of the very important strategic options that they have been using, I think that it's a wake-up call for the continent of African officials that it's not business as usual. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.